You get out your comfort zone. You're used to sitting behind a computer, tapping away at your keyboard and placing a few bets, and then suddenly you're on stage in front of 300 people trying to make yourself sound intelligent.
Come on, let's go!
You think I'm going to come on here and put one of the Aussies in the elite tier?
I'd vote for Rob with 25,000. I wouldn't vote for you.
I can basically just cheat and get the same bets that they're getting. And
it's weird because you can also pay your bills at the same place where you bet.
I mean, you're a short guy.
What?
This guy talks a lot of trash. He's talked a lot of trash about me, Rob, a lot of people in the community, but he's refusing to show his face.
Touting yourself as a pretty good NFL gambler, I thought you were an idiot.
Say testing, I'm a cuck. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Aussies, going head-to-head with the Aussies. That's what I drew for, and I said, get him, Kirk.
And they call me a mean-spirited name. I don't hang out with them.
The Toronto Maple Leafs at 14-1 are staring me dead in the face.
I'm already getting, a lot of early. This could be the best Circles Off episode that's ever been done.
Welcome to Circles Off, episode number 168, right here, part of the Hammer Betting Network, and presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I am Rob Pizzola, joined by Johnny from betstamp. How's it going?
We're almost there, Rob. Couple weeks until NFL. Best time of the year, without a doubt. What are you up to?
Yeah, it's just I'm prepping for NFL, but I've actually I can't believe I'm going to say this. I'm actually getting into college football because I've been watching the conference previews that Powers did with Kanish over on Hit the Books. This is a plug, but it's not really a plug because I've actually been watching them. Threw down some, plug your ears for a second. Threw down some futures bets.
No good.
Threw down a few futures bets. Really good prices.
I do think those will win, though, by the way. Like, they've been moving a lot of stuff on the futures.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm not saying that they're bad bets, by the way. I just don't place futures. But, yeah, those will win, man. Like, the college football market, especially right now, those guys are crushing.
Time value of futures is one of the first episodes we ever did. One of the OG. Actually, you know what? Anyone who hasn't listened to, just the audio-only episodes on Spotify, it's within our first 10 episodes, but we did a pretty lengthy thing on futures at that point, if anyone ever wants to go back and listen to that. But we don't live in the past. We live in the now. And the now is the time to bet at Pinnacle Sportsbook, the sharpest sportsbook on the planet. Find out what pro bettors have known for the last 25 plus years. Pinnacle is where the best bettors play. I've been playing at Pinnacle for a long time. I will continue to play at them for a long time because they're, frankly, just very good. If you're a pro bettor or you're someone who's looking for decent limits, you're going to get volume at Pinnacle. If you're looking for a ton of different markets, you're going to get those markets at Pinnacle. If you're looking for great customer service and everything else, Pinnacle has that as well. So if you do sign up in Canada, make sure you use code HAMMER to do so, as it does support us here on Circles Off. You must be 19 plus, not available in the U.S. And as always, please play responsibly. Our guest this week is the head honcho of the Smart Betting Club, otherwise known as SBC, which you can check out at smartbettingclub.com. As part of that, he also hosts the Smart Betting Club podcast. He's a sharp sports bettor himself, known for his work with a large betting syndicate. You can follow him on Twitter at PeteLing1. Pete Ling joins us today on Circles Off. How's it going?
Yeah, really good, guys. Thanks for having me on. I enjoy listening to Circles Off, so it's a pleasure to be invited on.
Yeah. Thanks for joining. For those who don't know Peter, although he doesn't sound like it, he is in Toronto right now.
I am, yeah. So I've been living in Toronto for 8 years. So I have a couple of Canadian kids, an English wife. But yeah, still very much can't lose the accent, right? But obviously very aware of what's going on here in North America.
So for those who couldn't have guessed yet, I guess tell everyone where you're from and then I guess your background and start in the betting industry.
Sure. So I think I guess it's the sweet spot of my age. I'm mid-40s now, but the internet, explosion of the internet, and obviously internet betting in the UK in the early 2000s. I was around for that particular time. So just at that sweet spot where you're looking to develop a career, trying to find your niche, and obviously I had a lot of interest in it. I've always had a background in maths and numbers, and I've always been fascinated by probability. So played games like Magic when I was growing up, played that D&D, all that kind of stuff, and numbers. And there's a soccer game called Championship Manager, which anyone who's from the UK, you're nodding there, Rob, you might have heard of it, but it's
I've played Championship Manager before as well.
Yeah.
This is like
so basically just
before my time, or is it still big now?
No, there's there's all sorts of different soccer sim games, but I don't know if it's still going on now, but I've unless I'm confusing this with something completely different, I'll let you continue here, Pete.
Yeah, you're right. It's like a football management simulator, but it's very much like the precursor to fantasy football. You would sit on I had an Atari ST. I don't know if that was big in Canada, but it was, it was powerful enough to power like games like that until like 4 or 5 in the morning. It's just all, numbers and working out tactics and drilling into that. So yeah, Champ Man. I think it's now called Football Manager. They've had
do you bet on this, or are you just like it's like a fantasy
it's
platform?
Just a fantasy play.
But do you play against somebody else?
No, it's a sim. Well, I don't know nowadays if you can, but I know it as Football Manager now. Which is basically like, just imagine you want to put yourself in the shoes of either the coach or manager of the team, or like general manager. It's like a sim engine. It's like playing
NHL Ultimate
It's like
Team?
playing Madden or NHL Ultimate Team, without actually playing the game.
Yeah, and everything would be applied a rating, so it's all very much like working through that process. So yeah, like that was my always interest levels in that kind of thing. I had a background in like more web design, web marketing. And I remember I had a friend who was very interested in stocks and shares, and he would get like a stocks and shares newsletter. This is like the mid-2000s. He would get a stocks and shares newsletter that would, basically review products that you could use for trading stocks and shares. And then he got sent one which was about betting, because he subscribed to the stocks and shares when he got sent a betting one, as they wanted him to subscribe to that. And at that time, me and him were doing a little bit of betting ourselves, and we were doing fairly okay with it. We found a few, what we'll talk about, like tipsters and betting services that we were using, so we knew a little bit about the industry. And then we were reading this newsletter, it just sprung out to us. They were just promoting and reviewing the products that paid them the most to say they were good, rather than the ones that were good. And there was a few that just stood out. The classic, it still goes on, it's the old ruse. So we just figured we could do something better, and that's where SBC kind of started out to be actually independent and review products in depth, and not just sell out to the highest bidder. So since then, it's obviously developed a fair bit, but that was the nucleus of how it started.
So what differentiates you guys now from, I've known of other platforms that exist in this space that are somewhat similar. What would you say differentiates SBC from those?
I think we go into quite a lot of detail from our reviews. So we don't do like one a week, because people like to go into the detail. So I actually, I have a trained actuary who does the analysis for us. So I give them the raw data, as much data as possible on the product or service we're reviewing. Sometimes we've got multiple data files to examine, like things about odds movement, maybe CLV, or all these kind of elements that we'll start to look into. And we'll crunch that data. We'll do like Monte Carlo simulations. We'll just really explore the data. So we can put forward an opinion based on what the data tells us, and often from that we can find, you might find a particular expert or service which has flaws within the data, which you can't actually find until you examine it. For example, a reliance on a few high-profile, big winners, or evidence of an edge that has just dried up, or evidence of a staking plan that isn't efficient, just stuff like that just helps point towards the edge and the skill set of the person involved or the service involved. And also, I think because we're independent, so people pay a membership fee to join our service, and we don't take a fee for the products or the services that we review. So if we were to review betstamp, it would be based on, or if you had a service, for example, we'd review it based on the data and the facts, and it wouldn't be because you paid us to do so. So
you guys did review betstamp back in the day, and I can confirm we did not pay you anything, so we appreciate that, sir. No, that checks out. That checks out. Pete, he's spitting facts right now.
Are you? Are the reviewing? Sorry, I just want to explain to the audience as well. So, terminology wise, you're going to hear stuff like tipsters, punters,
tipster, tout, punter, better,
handicapper.
Handicapper, exactly. So just in case that gets lost in translation for anyone out there. So for the tipster or tout services that you're reviewing, are they predominantly North American based? Is this worldwide? Where are you reviewing most of this?
Well, these days, betting is very much worldwide. The market follows a similar pattern across the world in many instances. We've got the market leaders like Pinnacle and even people like Bet365 and a lot of the firms that are international. So the odds that you can get across the world are going to be the same in North America and Canada as they often are in the UK, in Australia, and in places like that. So you can absolutely follow them around the world. And that's an increased focus of what we're trying to showcase to people and say, look, okay, these might be services that originate. There's one from Spain that's really good that originate from Spain, or they might originate from Eastern Europe, but they're actually applicable here, and you can follow them from like South America. You can follow them from wherever you are, just because bookmakers generally follow a certain pattern, and you don't have to be in. Like I'm working with a guy who's in New Zealand at the moment betting on rugby, and he's working with him as an originator and getting down in Canada. So, this is on New Zealand rugby. Of course, you're going to stand out a bit more betting on that from Canada, but you can still get down on some of these markets. So that's what we're trying to showcase is that international appeal, and that you can use them from Canada just as you can from Europe or wherever else.
Interesting. I actually do want to talk a little bit more about that. But before we do, in the last couple weeks, there was the Right Angle Sports account tweeted a thread. So Ed, who we had on for episode 100, tweeted a thread of they spend, as a group, Right Angle Sports, somewhere between $8,000 and $12,000 a year buying picks from other groups. They outline some reasons that they do that, but it helps them with market timing and all sorts of other reasons. People can check out the thread if they want. In your experience of all the tipsters and services that you evaluate, what percentage of them do you think actually have real sustainable value to someone who wants to buy that service?
Well, in terms of across the market, so like 1% of the amount of services that are out there, it would probably be a low number like that, maybe even 0.5%. And there's so many out there and so many come and go, and you've got that survivorship bias at times as well, haven't you, where you find those services that have just made it through just because through luck they've had a particularly strong period. So there are a lot of services that we don't actually examine just because you can tell straight away they're not up to much. So it would be hard to gauge, but there's enough out there that are good enough that you get a sense of from, like, you can tell so much from visiting their website, the language they use. So it's sometimes quite easy to pick out the obvious ones, but
for guys like me and you, that is, Pete, but for the vast majority of the population, it's actually challenging.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think if you don't have the time to get into it, especially when it comes to like the less obvious elements, for example, when you get into the data, but there are some simple things that you can question and ask in terms of practicality and viability of the service, and sometimes those answers that come in are really informative. Just the skill level of the person running the service, do they actually bet? And you can get a really good sense of that really quickly based on their answers if you do bet.
That's interesting. There's also Johnny, you might remember this. There's like that tout chart that circulated years ago that Sprague put together, right? It's a flow chart of basically whether or not you should pay for picks. Inevitably, with the way that this flow chart is designed, it all leads towards you shouldn't pay for picks.
But it's not 100% accurate in a lot of ways.
Well, I wanted to talk about that because one of the biggest things in that flow chart is, does the tipster move the betting market when they release their plays? If no, don't buy it, type of situation. Have you evaluated services before that don't have much in terms of market presence, so to speak, doesn't move the market on release, that you think, and I'm not asking you to name names, but do those services exist that you believe are actually worthwhile?
Yeah, there are some out there, and obviously they build up their profile, their name. I've seen some, like in horse racing in the UK, which is obviously a huge market for people in the UK and Ireland, that start off quite small and then become quite influential just because word spreads and there's that tipping point because the market is being influenced so heavily by the amount of money that's into the market, and people become so aware of some of those edges. So they do exist, but the majority are obviously having an impact in the markets and where they're advised, and especially after a period of time when they've got a strong reputation, and bookmakers will be aware or make notes and join the services themselves, to make sure that they don't get caught out.
So I'm looking at Smart Betting Club now, and I've been through the website before. So you guys actually do recommend services that could be worthwhile. What goes into evaluating that, and you're willing to put your name behind a service out there? Because ultimately, there's not a lot of people who are willing to do that in the space, that are willing to stand behind someone as like, I strongly believe that these are winners and you should get the picks. So how do you evaluate the credibility and the effectiveness of a lot of these services?
Well, initially, it's the conversations that you do have with them. What do they do? How do they advise bets? You're looking at the practicality of actually, as a user, actually following the service. Can you take advantage of them? Are they, for example, taking advantage of boosts or the type of bets that obviously don't last long on your account? Maybe certain concessions that get added and can be removed from your account. So if they're taking things like that, sometimes it's not really going to be something that we're going to explore. And then if you have a sense of their impact on the market and how they're quoting prices and odds, so naturally odds do move and lines do move, especially with the influential services. But are they just scraping the very best price or the very best line that they can achieve or that's available at the market? Or are they being fair? Are they being realistic? Are they making decisions upon when they release those bets to allow subscribers the optimal way of getting the most value down? And that's the practicality of it. And we do, examine the odds movement or line movement, so we can see like the degree of it, how quickly it takes place. And sometimes you get a really good sense of the practicality of following. If you have to be on that bet within 5-10 minutes, then that's fine if you can do that, but obviously not for others. And then, so that's a key part of it. And then we'll get into the data, and not just has it made a profit or not. Like, we'll obviously have an angle on that profit, but things like, are they reliant on big winners? Is their staking plan optimal? Has their model lost its edge? Has it gained its edge? Are we seeing any change in strategy over the years in terms of the average prices or the type of markets they're targeting? So sometimes you can find, I was looking at an NFL tipster, and they do handicaps and totals, and they had, I think their edge on the handicaps was so much better than on the totals. So there's one of those things, you don't know whether the service knows that. Probably they don't, because they probably might adjust their strategy a little bit. So that's one thing. And then we'll also do the Monte Carlo simulations, and they're really good because you can get a live record. You can get a 2,000 size data sample, and then you compare it to Monte Carlo simulations, where, for those not familiar with it, you basically run that model millions of times and look at all the different, what the simulations showcase in terms of the extremes and the averages that you could obtain. And that's a really good sense of seeing if a set of results is A, made up, which obviously does happen, right, or B, if it's this just really outperformed itself, or even underperformed. And from that, you get a sense of drawdowns, which would be, how much you can lose, the type of losing runs you can have, and then comparative figures like Sharpe ratios and p-values, which basically work out if they give it a score in terms of if it's a record based on skill and luck. So all of that combined, it comes together, and then we try and write that up and put forward a balanced review and viewpoint. And then the best ones, the ones which have been around for the longest time and consistently grinded out that edge, and have adapted and handled losing, because every bettor has a losing period. It's sometimes how you handle it that differentiates the long-term, the people that can stay in the game long-term or not. So, yeah, so a long-winded answer to your question there, but hopefully it answers it.
No, that was actually great. This is next-level stuff for people who don't know. This is coming from someone personally who's evaluated.
Consulted for sports.
Well, no, that hasn't come up in a while. Let's not go there just yet. But this is someone who's personally tracked a lot of touts in the past before and gone through records, and the amount of work that what you're describing is through the roof. So
massive.
I'm just curious.
Remember the one.
Yeah, I did.
We're laughing at examples because we know what we're talking about here.
I know specifically many touts that I've tried to track and how long it's taken, and to get to the bottom of whether this is a real play or not. It's absurdly complex. How much of this is manual versus automated when you're going through these accounts?
You really need data in a good format. So if you can get it in a usable format, that's the first point. And if you're following a handicap or a tout that doesn't have a set of data, they're not worth the time. If they don't have it in a spreadsheet or some kind of exportable or usable format, you just don't. I'm not going to do that work for them. And obviously, they're not taking it seriously because you've got to track your edge, you've got to track your bets. So as long as you've got that, actually, as you repeat the process, it becomes a lot quicker. And then you become used to, you get used to the way the data is presented internally and then how you can interpret that. So it takes a little while until you get used to it, and then it almost becomes second nature. But yeah, it's a fair amount of work. And then it's translating that data and trying to explain it to people in a way that makes sense. That's sometimes the most challenging part.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's funny that you mentioned that as just like, if they don't have it in a usable format, I just eliminate them right away as a credible source. And you could basically eliminate at least 95% of the industry that way now.
It doesn't even need to be a usable format, but like if you're just, the lack of record keeping is astonishing in some of these guys.
It really is. Yeah. It's not only the lack of record keeping sometimes, but also the lack of quality in record keeping. Like, some people do keep records, but it's so piss poor that it just becomes impossible. That
guy's now keeping his record. I'm not even going to name him because I don't want more notoriety, but one of those like DFS thread guys.
Yeah.
He's like keeping an MLB record. He has yet to post a price. It's insane. This pisses me off so much. He's just posting like totals, like strikeouts over 8.5, unders 8.5, whatever. He just posts a number with no price, and then he has his record, win loss, win loss, win loss, and he's just counting like I'm 117 and 110.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I saw this recently with who posted it. I wouldn't mind calling them out if I remembered who it was, but it was things I've bet this NFL season. It's Zach Wilson unders, and it's like, first of all, Zach Wilson's not lined in pretty much any spot. So I'd love to know where that came from. Also, unders on what? Zach Wilson unders could mean a million things. No price associated.
These unders on roster spot with the team.
Under roster spot, yeah. This is the type of stuff that you have to filter through pretty regularly. So kudos to you, Pete, because I don't have it in me to go through that. In terms of the betting culture in North America relative to, let's say, the UK or other regions that you've dealt with, are the cultures similar? Like, do you see the appetite for people to buy picks the same in North America as it is in other parts of the world? Are the services generally better in or worse in North America versus other parts of the world? Can you describe the landscape a little bit?
It does seem to me like the cost of services and what people will pay for picks in North America is a lot more than what people in other jurisdictions would look to pay for. And that might be the nature of some of the big markets that they're targeting. They're playing into NFL markets, for example. But there does seem to be that culture there. So, and people will bet a lot more on any one individual bet as well. So that's been a little struggle to find when you compare to some of the services which we look at, which generally trend to to give it in US dollars between like $50 to $150 a month across different types of platforms and sports, with some really good tools. And then you compare that to services that might be charging hundreds and hundreds per month, or maybe thousands per season. And you obviously get some of those touts that are putting up whale picks or whatever they call them, triple lock picks. Some of these names are fantastic, but $500, my guaranteed no lose play or whatever. So I do think there's that as well. So I'm not sure why that is, but from our perspective, we're always looking at how much you can make beyond the costs that you're outlining you're spending on a service. So if you do the maths, if it costs like $10 a pick and you assume a 5% return, then you need to bet like $200 a play to break even in equity. And then that obviously doesn't take into account the risk of the picks losing that you've paid for. So if you're only paying 100, 150 a month, and you find services where you can churn through volume, I think that's the key thing. You can churn through the volume. You can use your capital. I've heard Trench talk about this in the past, in your pod and on other people. Like, volume is the key. And even if you're hitting a low ROI, just keep playing and keep hitting that volume. So, like, I'm not quite sure the differences on that front. I have those theories that people just seem to be a little bit more inclined to paying a bit more and used to paying a bit more. But I'm here to say you don't necessarily need to. But obviously, if you're going to be betting on some certain sports like NFL and some of the big sports, like there is most of the services, some good services, are all a little bit more expensive.
Do you reckon that maybe the North American market is just behind the curve, just because regulation happened more recently than in the UK, for example? Like, would you believe that over time, let's say 10 years from now, are people in North America going to be willing to pay the same amount for picks that you're currently seeing? Because obviously there's a lot of evolution in the industry, and right now there's a lot of what I would call social media experts out there that, and experts in quotations for those who are listening in podcast form, that sell themselves as experts that aren't. Do you think that 10 years from now we're looking at the same amount or more, or do you think that the general population kind of wisens up to what's out there?
I think you'll be looking at the same. I don't really think that what we do is great, no doubt. And I like your podcast and I like what you do at betstamp, but really we're appealing to a small minority of the people that bet. Most people are interested in things like line shopping. They're not interested in finding value. They're not really interested in, they want to have a bet because they enjoy the action. They have sweat on the game. They enjoy testing their opinion. Whereas, we come to it from a point of view of trying to make a little bit of cash on it. So I think it's just going to be much the same, I'm afraid.
Interesting. You mentioned I
was going to say something actually on that. The tout market has changed over the past, like, since we launched betstamp, which is like 4 years ago at this point. It used to be a lot more like scams and touts that didn't win, who are just like marketing to people and be like, yeah, I got all the info, like I'm an originator. But now, like, if you want my honest opinion, and I've come around on this, so I'll preface it by again saying, as of today, this is my opinion. There's at least, and I'm not even joking here, at least 15 things I could think of that you could buy that would actually help you win and would legitimately let you win. And it seems
so. When you say things, are you talking tools or just
people, tools,
okay.
Things?
Yeah.
Like some of them are just following specific people on picks that they give out, and you could win on.
I buy picks. I'm not going to disclose what I buy, but I buy picks. And that Right Angle Sports thread, which we'll actually link in the description below for anyone who wants to go through it at some point. It's value. There are serious reasons to be able to buy plays. Understanding what's going on in the industry is important, but there are like hidden gems all the time.
Absolutely. And crazy part of it is I didn't necessarily believe this because, like the tout chart is like, oh, why would they do this? Why would they do this? The reality is, like, there's certain odd sets right now where I can snipe off and give you like 20 plays right now that are going to win. But I can't necessarily bet those myself for more than $1. So if I can sell that to you and say, hey, give me $10 for all these, give me $10 per play. These are going to win long term. And you're getting $1,000 per play. It's going to work out for both of us. So at the end of the day, like, there are actual win-win scenarios. I know it seems far-fetched, especially from us on this podcast, because we've talked about for so long, like, it's not smart. And for the majority of people, it's obviously not smart to buy these random, like, scam touts. But, like, a perfect example is like the Canby book. Anyone who is anybody is obviously limited at Canby and can't fire any amount, limited to pennies, $1, pennies. But if you had 3 different Canby outs right now, I could sell you a product for $100 and say, hey, pay me $100 and I'll send you all these Canby plays. You're gonna print money. But the reality is, like, most people be like, oh, this must be a scam because why isn't this guy making money? And it's like, that just is his way of making money off of the Canby plays.
I find in the sports betting industry that there's these common threads that get picked up on and continuously just get pushed because they make sense for the majority of people. So a perfect example is don't bet parlays, right? which as a winning bettor, we know that parlays could be a very effective tool for betting and winning more. Additionally, they can be very effective in terms of getting your account potentially profiled as a square account or a sharp account. However, for 99% of people, maybe slightly less than that, 98% of people, the advice is don't bet parlays. Don't, because you're not a winning bettor. You're just making things worse for yourself, right? Like that's advice. It's the same, in my opinion, with the picks industry. You get people who are like, don't buy picks, never buy picks. And honestly, for 98% of people who are, if they're going to do their own homework, they're not equipped to discern who's a scammer from who actually wins. Most of these people don't know, like, who's respected in market. So don't buy picks for 98% of people. It makes sense.
Like, there's legitimately Telegram bots that will like help you snipe off lines from certain soft books, and you're going to win off those. But there's also Telegram bots that are guys giving out his NFL picks, and you're going to get absolutely crushed on those. So it really is like, oh, you can't just go say like, oh yeah, you can't buy picks off Telegram. It's a scam.
Yeah.
It's give and take with anything. Exactly what you're saying.
I mean, the shades of grey, right? The shades of grey. It's like people who come up and say you could only make a profit betting on this sport or betting in this way.
Yeah.
It's not always true. It's just trying to, create a headline or, a little feed, a little, what you call it, a quote, a little bit of spin to try and get people to pay attention to you. It's not actually true. The shades of grey. Parlays are great for trying to get more money on a bet that you're limited on.
Yep,
exactly.
Put it in a parlay, get more down. I do that all the time. So a lot of sharp bettors bet on parlays.
Beauty. All right, moving forward, this some more interesting stuff, Peter. But you also bet as well yourself. Wanted to ask you about that and kind of how that's been going. If you want to describe kind of what you're working on there.
Yeah. So what I do at SBC kind of feeds a lot of what I do my own betting wise. I also work part of a syndicate, which is the third strand of it. So yeah, a lot of the products and services I've used or I would use or have used myself. There's probably about half a dozen that I use at the moment. A bit like you're saying there, Johnny. You've got, whether it be bots, whether it be tools, that allow you to find value in the markets or the outs that you have available to you. And I use them. How I do it, how I have done it, is I do it myself a lot to begin with. Understand how it works, the vulnerabilities in the market, where I can take advantage of them, how many bets, how to do it. And then I have brought people in to help me with that. So with my business, with SBC, I brought people in to help write and to put things together, but I obviously understand how to do it myself and have done it myself. And the same with the betting. I've got a small team that I work with that help me get down on what I need to. So that's my theory, really. I can do it myself, and maybe I could just do that, but then I can't scale it. There's a finite amount of time and things I can do. But then if I bring people in, of course, I'm going to pay for them and pay for their time and their work, but I'm still making an edge over and above that. And that allows me to scale up. But the goal for me is volume, is trying to get as much sharp volume, a decent betting down as possible, maximize my capital and turn over my money as much as I can. So that's my kind of theory on betting and what I do.
Interesting.
So you review the tipsters, tout services, and the ones that are good, you're like, I'm firing these. Sounds like a pretty decent strategy.
Well, but also, like, it's a practice what you preach type of thing, right? Like, if your product is that and you're not doing that, then what's the point of having the product? So I do appreciate that. And honestly, again, this is not a PSA. This is not like go and buy every tout's picks. Like, you have to be very, very smart about it. But I will say that there's been a percentage of my income that I've won over the years by just betting other people's things, and it's means to an end if you know what you're looking for.
I've bought picks from multiple people, especially when I was younger, because I just wanted to try it, and I didn't like. It wasn't the only thing I was doing, and I wasn't just firing those. So, I can't necessarily knock or credit anyone, but honestly, I was like pretty 50-50. Like, I think I probably bought like 6 people's picks. 3 of them actually won. One of those was probably fluke. 3 of them lost, and there are probably losers that I shouldn't have bought. So of the 6, I'd say 4 I regret, 2 I don't regret. But one of the ones that I bought far made up for all of the subscriptions of all the other 6 plus all the money lost from those. So it's crazy. But yeah, you can sometimes find some value. It just really depends on what. And another thing is, it really is, for those of you listening, it's really no different than like working with an originator.
No, it's the same thing. It really, and you can't say like you're stealing the plays for yourself because it's being sold.
No, absolutely not stealing the place for yourself if you're buying them.
Of course.
But I'm saying like, it's no different than working with an originator who is pretty unproven in the market and, you know, might be getting value here, might be getting value here. It's no different. It's just getting plays from somebody.
Well, and in particular to Pete's case here, I think what's interesting is that there's overlap here, right? It's like what he's doing for his business. And you correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, but like what you're doing for your business is directly applicable to your personal betting. So it's like killing two birds with, or sorry, PETA, feeding two birds with one scone. It's like feeding two birds with one scone, which is, I mean, that's like the most effective use of time possible as well.
Yeah, excellent pronunciation of scone. I think we call it scone.
Do you call it scone?
Scone. Yeah, but that might be a north-south divide thing.
Anytime you can feed two birds with one scone, that's
with one scone. Now I feel like a complete idiot. I thought it was scone my entire life. I didn't know that it was scone.
It probably is scone because they wouldn't have rhymed it with it was stone.
This is a very random question, but I need to know your actual personal opinion on scones.
Oh, well, I think scones are I love scones. Bit of jam, bit of butter. Yeah, a little bit of cherry jam. That's my favorite. Yeah, I love them. You know, like high tea, bit of afternoon tea. I mean, I'm British. I have a cup of tea every evening after my dinner. So I don't have a scone with it, a scone, but definitely a cup of tea.
See, like most of the scones I've had in life, the only reason I'm asking, have been pretty dry. Like you need the jam. You can't just really eat it alone. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan. I'm not big, but that's just me personally. You mentioned earlier, used an example of, I think, a Canadian who might buy like an Australian's picks and get down on rugby or something like that. We don't tend to see a lot of, I'll just call it like international betting, so to speak, at least not in my inner circles. It's like guys who are in North America get down on North American stuff.
I've seen plenty of international betting. I've seen some guys like absolutely like throttle like KBO, Euro ball, stuff like that. I mean,
that's a good point. We actually had one of those guys tracking on betstamp. He probably still does.
I've seen someone actually throttle EuroLeague baseball. EuroLeague basketball.
Let's say it was a North American guy going to buy picks, for example. I think they tend to lean towards buying like
NFL, MLB, NHL,
North American guys' picks when there could be actually better serve. Why do you think, Pete, that we don't see as much of that?
Well, I think there's people that are interested in the sports that they like to watch and they like to have an interest in. And I think that's a key point. You know, a lot of the sports I profit in and have done well with, I don't watch. I don't have any interest in the sport. It just is a P&L at the end of a spreadsheet or on a betting account. So it's that distinction between, do you want to bet for fun? Like go and have a bet on your team or the sport that you enjoy. If it's a Sunday or you're going to a game or you just like a particular, that's fine. But if you want to make profit, you need to separate the idea that it has to be on this particular sport. Because if you're betting on like a traditional big American sport, like it's very highly efficient markets and it's very, very tough to beat. And then you look at some of the smaller, more niche sports, and you'll find a few North American books, well, more than a few, aren't particularly clued up on what they're offering. They're pricing it up, but they're not aware of it. They're not really paying attention to it. So there has been and continues to be vulnerabilities there on other sports that they're not seeing much action on, but they're not really paying any attention to. So I would just encourage people, like, don't feel like you have to bet on what you already know. If you understand value and you understand the idea of, you know, this price is value and that price isn't, and you can get the prices that are value and consistently hit that, then you will do well whether you like that sport or you watch it or you have an interest in it or not. So yeah, I bet a lot on. And it's funny you mentioned European basketball there, Johnny, because there's a guy from Greece I've been working with on European basketball, absolutely killing it. And again, you can bet it extensively from here. So like I couldn't tell you one player in European basketball.
No, and yeah.
And you don't need to. You don't need to.
That's the truth.
Out of curiosity, Pete, did you ever try your hand at originating sport, or do you do any origination yourself now?
No, I did a little bit, probably about 10 years ago, on Premier League soccer, but it's, again, just for my own interest. And I made a small profit on it, but the amount of work required, and this is before, you're going up against people who have such advanced models, and obviously you're going up against bookmakers again as well, and so such difficulties to do it, and obviously the time involved just didn't make sense to do it. I did try my hand at it, and hats off to people who can do it, because that takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and expertise to do that.
Yeah, it's just your model's very unique. Because you mentioned off the top that you're big into maths when you were younger, and typically the natural progression there is like, okay, I'm going to try to beat this sport using math. You kind of have, but in a backwards way. So I was just curious about that. But in terms of Smart Betting Club, what are the future plans for you? I mean, are there any new projects, any new features that you're working on, or are you just going to go down this same path for a little while?
Yeah, the same path for a little while. Like we're trying to expand into different territories like this. So we've been doing a lot of work this year on, like we talked at the start, terminology, and whether it be scone or scone or jam or jelly, or all the different like tomato, all the different terminologies, but obviously from a betting viewpoint, and also from the point of, like, if you are living in Australia, or if you are living in, I don't know, North America or Europe, like, what are the differences if you wanted to follow a particular service compared to if you're living in UK and Ireland, which always was our traditional market. We're trying to branch out and appeal to people because of that international flavor. So we're trying to do more on that, trying to explain to people in their language, or based on what's available to them in their country in terms of bookmakers or markets, how they can take advantage of some of the options available to them. So it'd be more of that. What we're seeing a lot more is advanced tools, whether it be, obviously a lot of them are synced up with platforms like Telegram, but advanced tools that you can use where you can find bets that tailor to you and your preferences when you're available to bet. So historically it used to be, if you followed a tout service, you'd get a text message or an email, and 500 people would get the same bet at the same time, and everyone's piling on that. Whereas now you're seeing an evolution to products where you can log in, it benchmarks it against a Betfair, a Pinnacle, the whatever other models are out there. It could be data golf, whatever, all these different sources of data, and then translates value. And then at that particular point in time, you can take the value that's available to you with the bookmakers you have. So we're seeing more of that, a customizable approach versus the old everyone back the same play at the same time. So trying to examine those kind of tools is really interesting, because you don't have a consistent set of results from everybody achieves. You need to build up a usage of it yourself, and that takes a little bit of time. So that's where we're focusing energy at the moment, and how we can really keep on top and review these products, which aren't traditional. You don't have those, same records for everybody, and then trying to present that and showcase people how they can make the most of it.
You mentioned data golf in there, and I just want to talk about that for 1 second. I know that data golf used to explicitly give out picks, so to speak, but I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, in recent years they've gone more towards just projections, right? Here are probabilities on tournaments. You can compare these against sportsbooks in real time. When you're evaluating these services, are you looking at strictly pick services, or will you also focus on sites that provide projections, maybe don't explicitly give out picks in real time, but have numbers? Do you do anything in that realm?
Yeah, we looked at data golf, but for that was a couple of years ago. We looked at it and we didn't actually publish anything, because we found we didn't really find anything that we could latch onto. I think they obviously do influence the market, and absolutely we'll look at things that even provide probability. We can obviously start to use that and make projections, and we can start to see if there's value there. But sites like that, I think that are very useful sites, but you need to feed that into your own model, your own working, and use it as a filter perhaps, rather than actually just use it on a standalone basis.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I do think that that's going to be the evolution in the space, personally. Maybe it might take longer to get there, but there are some services now that are 24/7 projections, basically, right? Like, you log in, here's what we make the game, you decide what you want to do with it. I personally think that that's much more valuable. It depends on your clientele, I guess. There are some people who just need the pick and they need to go bet it. But a lot of people will probably just tail that at a bad number. Let's call it out for what it is. Pick goes out at -135. It moves. Somebody, is is at the dentist or they're at work in a meeting. They can't bet it until minus 150 or something like that. Whereas I think the live projection systems make more sense in the sense that you can do things on your own time, log in, see plays. There's pros and cons of both. But I do think that the market might slowly move towards that.
The future is obviously like, well, I mean, I obviously believe it's because we're doing the betstamp player props tool, but the future is obviously allowing people to bet whenever they want to bet at any time. They can just like check and then find the value at that time.
Yep.
If you're doing an alert system, it's not really feasible for the sharper better. It's not feasible for the square better. Like the guy who wants to put in 15 hours a day or the full day, it's suboptimal for both. So having it just there where you can essentially check at any time. And I don't like any of this shit where you got to like run a simulation or do all this. Like that's not, to be honest, it's like a waste of time. It should just be like, hey, where are the plays there? Okay, here, I put in what I have, what I want. Like you shouldn't be looking and seeing plays on a specific sports book when you don't have that sports book available in your region or you don't have an account there. You should be able to X that out and then just basically like get the exact customized thing for you. That's definitely the future because that's how it's moved in other industries.
So the best value there, Johnny, when you talk about that, like the best value there is when you have outs that aren't listed on sites like that because you're the only person taking them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've done that. Like I've done that here. It's a Spanish-based tennis service. It's probably revealing and giving up from the secret sauce, but like there's one that we reviewed. It's called Winner Odds. So I might as well give it out, Winner Odds, and we've done some stuff on there. And I think probably I'm the only person in Canada who'd been hitting them for the past 2 years, and they don't have the FanDuels and the DraftKings and the Caesars listed on their site. So the Bet365s are getting hammered and all those different firms and they have Australian and Spanish sites, but the Canadian ones aren't. I think maybe they've added a few more recently, but yeah, if you can find those ones where nobody else is doing them and the bookmaker's not got 100 people trying to bet on an ITF tennis bet at the same time, then that's gold.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. That's certainly an edge when you're one of the only people who is betting something sharp into one specific out versus when it's mass market, especially now with the profiling that goes on people's accounts. Service release of play, 40 people all bet it at once at one specific sports book. Traders just going in and just like every one of these accounts is limited. But when you're the only one doing it, it's much harder for them to latch onto that. I did want to talk to you about a couple other things before we get onto our personal reflection section here. But about a year ago, I came on your podcast, the Smart Betting Club podcast. I've listened to a bunch more episodes since then. Pretty solid. Let the people know what it's all about, what's going on, and where they can find it.
Yep. So we're on all the major podcast directories like Apple, Spotify, YouTube. We don't do a YouTube video. I've tried to do that, but it distracts my guests. So kudos to you guys for making that work. So we're able to interview a lot of betting experts, generally people who make their betting pay in different ways. So, whatever different walk of life. So it could be soccer, it could be golf, it could be tennis, it could be horse racing, it could be, all these different people from experts to originators to professional bettors to bookmakers. We've had a whole variety of people on. We've even had the head of the UK Gambling Commission, who's effectively the regulator of the UK, the iGaming Ontario head. And obviously, I don't know if you follow that, but there's a lot of criticism, a lot of problems in that space at the moment, generally due to the fact they're pretty useless. So getting him on was quite good, because it's the first time he's actually come on a show where he answers some difficult questions. So it's actually been quite good, and I'm just working out plans for the next set of episodes. We're just on episode 76, so we're going to be blitzing through a whole bunch in the fall. See, another Americanism, the fall, and I'm so tempted to say autumn.
Yeah, I was going to say, what could it be? The autumn. I guess there you go. Like you're speaking.
You're Canadian now.
Yeah.
Earlier you said you like to have a tea after your dinner. I was almost going to correct you, say, don't you mean supper? But no.
Supper is like, have you ever called it supper in your life?
Not once.
I think that's like a very Eastern Canadian thing. I think that's a very Eastern Canadian thing for it to be supper, personally. But that's a weird one. We're coming off Bet Bash a couple of weeks ago. You actually ran a one-day betting event in London called SmartBash.
Yeah.
I don't know where you got the name from or if there's any sort of trademark
I can
issues
tell you.
there. Go for it.
I can tell you.
Yeah, go for it.
So originally it was an idea between myself, the Smart Betting Club, and a site called Bookie Bashing. So SmartBash was the two. What do you call it when you have two words together? I don't know. There's a term, but that's why.
I'm not sophisticated.
There's definitely a term, though.
I'm not sophisticated. Math has always been my strength. The English language is not. Vocabulary has not been. But what are the plans for that going forward? Is that going to be a yearly thing? What's your plan running that?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. So we work with Matchbook on that event. So we have the organisation involved. They brought in a bit of the logistics towards it. And we had about 300 people at Chelsea Football Club. So I was really pleased with how it went down. We had some, a mix of rec punters through to some of the big syndicates. And big bettors in the space there. And it went down really well. And I think we're going to see if we can perhaps recreate it next year. Still to have those discussions. It just seemed a really good opportunity to meet and connect and network with other people. And I think a fair bit of business was done that day. So, yeah, it was good fun, challenging because, we've never done anything like that. You get out your comfort zone. You're used to sitting behind a computer, tapping away at your keyboard and placing a few bets, and then suddenly you're on stage in front of 300 people trying to make yourself sound intelligent. So yeah, hopefully we'll do that again. So still looking at plans for 2025, and if we can do it, we'll be back in London, I'm sure, and trying to recreate the SmartBash thing.
Perfect. You can follow Peter on Twitter at PeteLing1, and there'll be announcements on that if it does come up. Producer Zach has come through in the clutch. The word you were looking for was a portmanteau when you combine two other words.
Did you know that? I've never heard that word before.
I've heard the word, but I would have never been able to tell you the definition of the word. So producer Zach coming through. That's why we pay him the medium bucks behind the glass over there. All right, you've listened to the show, Pete. It doesn't have to be related to sports betting. It can be. It's actually really evolved into not being related to sports betting. I can't remember the last time we had a sports betting related one. Totally up to you. One thing you think is plus EV in life, one thing that you think is minus EV.
Sure. Well, we have a mutual friend, Serge, and he's been messaging me all week with his plus EV. And they're terrible. I heard the one that you read out on the Bet Bash live show. Was it Crossing the Road? Don't wait for the...
Yeah, that was his.
He has also sent me a few as well, and one I can't read on air with certainty.
That one was a good one.
I think I got that one.
His best one that he's ever made was one that we cannot read on air, unfortunately.
Because he sent me one before as well. I said I'd read on air. He said... Where am I? I'm just going to read it out. It's something about his neighbour. Here we go. That's it. One he sent earlier today intrigued me because he said, negative EV is fighting with your neighbour. It's very rarely worth the stress to fight with someone you see very often, and you can't depend on them for common things like taking out the trash, picking up the mail, etc. Now, I don't know about you, but that triggered in me an immediate warning. It was like, what has he done to his neighbour?
What's
going on there?
This is a good one. I'll tell you right now.
Don't you hate your neighbor?
No, I don't. So here's the thing.
No, I'm stirring up shit. We can cut that out.
No.
This is a negative EV to air this episode. His neighbor's going to listen.
Absolutely no problem. The neighbor on my right side will not listen to this episode, guaranteed. Neighbor on the other side, there's a chance that he might. But it is very important to be able to rely on your neighbors for stuff. Right now, I'm watching my next door neighbor's cats while he's away in the Bahamas. Whatever, I go over once a day, put some food down. It's no problem. But then, he'll watch my dog and my Tortellini, while I'm away. He'll feed him. It's just good to be in that situation where you just have another person that can help you out. And when you get into, there's lots of neighborly situations I've heard about before where people just get really, really cheesed and upset about it, and it's honestly not worth it. Just stay on your neighbor's good sides. I like that one from Serge.
Yeah, that's finally a good one. I'll give you mine. Mine's drive-throughs. You really have to play. It can be negative EV or plus EV, and we all like drive-throughs these days, right? Especially in the winter.
Peter, I have no idea what you're saying.
Drive-throughs?
Drive-through, like at a Starbucks or Tim Hortons. What do you
drive-through?
Call it?
Drive-throughs.
Yes. Okay, I thought you were saying dry fruits. Drive-throughs. Okay, I love a convenient drive-through. Yes.
Agreed. Yeah, plus EV. So
plus EV. Well, no, but it can be negative EV. But this is what I'm saying. You get to Tim Hortons, and if you have to weigh it up based on the size of the queue. And the amount of times I see people getting into a queue which is 10 plus cars long, they're going to be in that queue for 20 minutes. Maybe,
I love how he's calling a line
longer.
a queue.
Oh, this is so
This is
good.
unbelievable.
I actually love this take, by the way. It's basically like evaluating. It's a
Game
determinant
theory.
of expected. Determine the expected value based off of the line and whether or not you're going to go in or go into the line. And so many people just don't do this because they're lazy. They stay in the. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Pete. You can finish your thought.
No, we're on the same page. And all I would add to it, to make it plus EV, get the app. Order on the app 5-10 minutes before you get there. Park up. There's no one in that space right next to it because they're all in the drive-through. And just go in 30 seconds. You've got your Tim Hortons terrible coffee, and you can get on your way.
Well, I thought this was a Tim Hortons infomercial when you were telling us to download the app, but then you threw in the terrible coffee. So at least it wasn't. No,
that's a good take. Very good take. Evaluate the drive-through line.
If you're also like going to an appointment or something where you need to be on time, and there's a drive-through line,
you can't get out once you're in.
You're toast. Especially if it's one of those with the longer curb and stuff. So don't do that. I mean, I know this. I have guys that show up at the golf course all the time, like half a hole late, and they're like, I got stuck in the McDonald's line getting a nice coffee. It's like, are you stupid? Like, get out of the car and go inside and take 2 minutes instead of waiting 20. So, I like that one. I didn't think we were gonna get. We go to some weird places with these plus EV, minus EV.
What do you got?
Okay, you're throwing to me. Okay, both of these are food takes. Okay, plus EV because it annoys me like maybe nothing else in life. When you go to a restaurant and they go and seat you, immediately check if the table is wobbly before you sit down. There is nothing worse. There's obviously a lot of things worse. I like to exaggerate a lot. But when you're eating at a restaurant,
nothing worse than
when you're eating at a restaurant and that table is wobbling while you eat, tell me you can actually eat without getting annoyed. You can't. And then they try to come over and be like, they pop like a couple things to try to. It never works.
Couple coasters.
Yeah, a couple coasters. It never works. So just check.
How often does that happen to you?
It happened to. I wrote this in my phone because it happened to me recently, and I'm like, this is not happening to me again. So I would say it's rare, right? Like maybe 10%, 1 out of 10 times, but it ruins the entire meal. I'm not exaggerating when I say it ruins the meal. Like I lean on the table, it's bouncing. You're like, imagine cutting a steak.
You're like messing up the person in front of you too by cutting too hard. Tables going everywhere. I agree. Wobbly table. Check before. There you go. I'll support you on this.
Plus EV. It's really quick, right? They're seating you at the table. You just quickly give it a little nudge.
Sometimes not even the table. It's the surface under the table.
It could be that. You could be on a patio and it's on the wrong spot or whatever, but you just quickly tell the server, excuse me, I'm sorry, the table's wobbly. Can I get another table? And that's easy. And then she's going to go and look for another table that's not wobbly. She's going to make sure. So I like that. I said she. It could be a he as well. I don't mean to gender discriminate here. Minus EV. Sharing food takes or pictures on socials. Okay?
Oh, massive.
This is bad. Not because of like, I don't care. You share whatever you want to share, but no, people who are looking at the picture, they cannot put them, they don't have, there's taste buds don't taste doesn't transfer through the picture. I posted a picture of a pizza last week and there was like, it was an amazing pizza. Very, very good, high quality pizza from a high quality Italian restaurant. Wood oven pizza, delicious. Some of the responses, very positive. Some of them, I'm like, why would I ever post a food picture again in my life?
After that red beet
this guy
risotto.
doesn't like olives. This guy thinks it's like, I'm eating from a terrible pizza place. I don't know why I do it. I'm going to stop. I say I'm going to stop. I probably won't. Yes, the beet risotto that my wife made like a few years ago. I got absolutely sewered for that. That risotto.
That was a good risotto. It looked pretty. It was obviously homemade, not a restaurant, but it looked great.
Johnny steak.
So good.
My steak,
Your
bro.
steak.
I'm getting rinsed for that.
I mean, in fairness.
That's how I like my steak.
Yeah, I know. Wasn't the
He's like, that's a rare steak. That's how I like the steak.
The people didn't know that barbecue too couldn't get up to like the really high temperatures to make a
toasting
good
food negative EV take. That's confirmed.
Anyways, I just want don't post food pictures because it just like
half these guys are literally eating Subway. So half these guys are eating Subway and complaining about these takes.
Well, I'm arguing with a guy about whether or not olives are good. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like,
there's a pineapple on it.
You know, someone's like, oh, onions on a pizza. What's wrong? I'm like, okay, like let's move on here. Banger pizza. Just trying to show that I'm living a lavish lifestyle, and people are roasting me on Twitter. Don't like that.
All right, I got mine here. I actually hate to shill a brand that is not paying me in any way, but I'm gonna do it because I want the listeners to experience this comfort that I experienced on the way home on my flight from Vegas. On the way there, family member of mine said, "Oh, I just got this new neck pillow that you can use on a flight. You know, you guys know like regular neck pillows, like a memory foam pillow, but this one." It's a certain fit. It's not necessarily just like a standard neck pillow. It folds up in memory foam, nice in a little carrying bag, very high end. And then it's like a bit higher at the back of the neck. And there's 3 ways you can use it. You can use it right side up, upside down, or to the side if you want to sleep, no matter where you are. And so I put this thing on, while still in Toronto before leaving my flight. I loved it so much. This thing was $50 on Amazon. I knew I was going to take the red eye home from Vegas. I bought this off of said family member for $150, wow. 3x retail value, and I absolutely stole it because I wasn't going to be able to get it in time for my flight. They also had a flight, which they weren't able to do this, but they got the free $100. Obviously reordered another one for $50.
You both came out winners, basically.
No. Messaged me after, said, I can't believe I charged you only $100 bonus. I should charge you $500. I had the worst flight of my life without this neck pillow. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give out the brand name. It's a Snuggle Neck Travel Pillow, SNUGL. $50 Canadian. So that's like $6 US. Should be able to get not.
It's like two British pounds.
$50 Canadian for like $35 US.
Couple of quid.
I've had one flight with it. Absolutely loved it. Flows up in a nice bag. Clips on the suitcase. I mean, if you're about comfort and experiencing a better sleep on the plane, I think it's a no-brainer. Obviously, it's a bit on the higher end price-wise for a neck pillow. But I see people buying these things at the airport for $30 anyways. If you're going to buy it at the airport, just get this in advance, order it off Amazon right now, call it a day.
People go through security at airport, they buy $7 water bottles. Like
exactly. That's for comfort.
People are just wasting money.
Yeah, but there's really no other option for that one. They got me in the monopoly. So yeah, Plus EV move of the week is the Snuggle neck pillow. And like I said again, this is a take for right now. I reserve the right to change this take in the future, but as of right now, I'm in on the Snuggle neck pillow. Second, negative EV move of the week is committing to something and then bailing on a person after. Especially when you know you're probably going to bail on that. Because let's be real, guys. You say someone, yeah, I'm going to be there. You know at that point whether you're going to be there or whether there's a chance you're bailing on that. Perfect example, and the reason I want to bring up on this one was our buddy Serge, mutual buddy, he asked me, hey, you want to play golf? At 7 a.m.
7 a.m. Vegas time.
7 a.m. Vegas
like
time.
35 degree
on the Wednesday at Bet
plus. Yeah.
To which I told him, honestly, Serge, I don't want to play. I'd love to play golf with you, but I can play with you anytime here in Toronto. I'm not going to go out in the 45 degree thing. I said, I'll just tell you no now because I don't want to tell you yes and then bail on you when I'm at the tables at 5 a.m. the night before and we got to go and we have to leave in half an hour. He said, you know what? I really appreciate you saying this now and not bailing on me the day of. All right. And I hate to throw a guy under the bus, but Pizzola bailed on him the day of, right in the morning.
I bailed on him because my back, which is still in shambles, by the way. I went for 3 massages while I was at BetBash. That's how much I lied on last week's episode. I said I didn't leave Circa very much. I left to go to Paradise Massage. Literally 10-minute drive is on Sahara or whatever. I didn't know what I was getting into, but the massage lady was so good that I just kept going back.
You just kept going back.
I just kept
3
going
massages.
back. Yeah, I mean, listen, actual massages, get your head out of the gutter, people. But no, I did bail on it. I had a legit reason. My back was destroyed and still is. Still in pain, Serge. So, but I agree. I'm with you. If you're gonna commit,
there's countless other examples at which you're gonna bail on someone, like, especially when this is the one I hate the most. When, let's say, somebody texts me and says, "Hey, you coming tomorrow, whatever," and you're not coming, and they message you at 5 p.m. and you wait 6 hours to respond, and this guy's like, he hasn't responded in 4 hours. He's obviously not coming. Yeah. Just respond right away. Rip off the Band-Aid. Hey, bro, not gonna make it. Sorry about that. I'll get you next time. Done. You're just a much better guy that way.
Totally agree.
Yeah. It's people waiting to see if a better offer comes up, right? They're waiting to see if another message comes in. Oh yeah, I'll make it now because nobody else has invited me. Yeah,
one of my close friends, I do love the guy, but he's the type of guy that doesn't commit to anything, but it kind of makes it seem like he'll get like 4 things to do on a Friday night, and he'll just decide last minute, and then doesn't show for the rest of the people. No message, no nothing. That's the worst kind of guy. One of my best friends. Don't be that guy who's just like waiting, exactly like Pete said, for different offers to come in and then picking what's best. You got to pick.
I do this, which I got to get better on. I do tell everyone, yeah, bro, let's go for a lunch. But then we never go for a lunch.
Pete's still waiting for his lunch.
That one I do a lot. I got to stop.
I like the way it's just become like a personal beef, for airing your grievances against friends and things like that. I like the evolution of Plus EV.
Yeah, I didn't think this. We probably should have just done 1 a week in the early going, but we started with 2, and it's hard to just go backwards.
Well, whatever we give, if you have 1, you give 1. If you have 2,
but it's just 2. I now make a note in my personal life whenever something happens that triggers me, I put it in. It's kind of fine. But
I feel like the value is in the niche ones. Like if you're giving niche things, like I know there's going to be at least 100 people that now check out the Snuggle neck pillow, and they're going to get some sales off this.
I heard there's at least a few hundred people that are now putting grapes in their cold drinks.
No, there's no way.
As ice cubes. And Lazy Susans in the fridge. That is a great one, by the way. Don't even
that one. I didn't disagree.
One guy comes. One guy posts a message on Twitter, a video, and he's like, "Oh, my like mustard always fall." Guys flinging this Lazy Susan around, and like put the mustard in the door if it always falls off the thing. Like anyways. Oh my God, this what a segment. All right, Pete, let's wrap up on this. If you could go back 5 years and talk to a previous version of yourself, what advice would you give to your former self?
I would definitely think the getting out and meeting people and getting out your comfort zone, trying different things. So what has really pushed my betting forward, and not just betting, but obviously the business, is by doing things like the podcast, doing things like we've done with the SmartBash, but not just that, but getting out and really being on the front foot, getting to know people, getting to meet people, not always with an idea of like a quid pro quo. Sometimes it's just about helping them, and invariably it comes back in spades. So I think just getting out, don't just sit at home in your own little space. Gambling Twitter is obviously great. There are a lot of people on there that you can engage with, that you can share expertise with, you can get to know. So I would probably say I would have done that a bit earlier, had the confidence or the nous to go and do that, and get out there and meet other people, because it's from those conversations and that your betting and your business and whatever else you're involved in can really develop. So that would be if I could cycle back, just to do that a bit earlier and do it a bit harder.
Love that. I love that. You can check out Pete's website, smartbettingclub.com. Follow him on Twitter at Pete Ling 1. Pete, appreciate you joining us today. For all of you out there who are not subbed yet to Circles Off, and that's over 50% of you watching right now, make sure you smash that subscribe button down below, set notifications, and if you enjoyed the content, hit us with a like as well. It does a lot for the Twitter algorithm. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. This has been Circles Off, episode number 168. Peace out.